Good morning. I wanted to talk about this morning just an interesting experience I had the other day um, surrounding a dev project. And it was to help, right, train AI for networking and cybersecurity. Very interesting experience. Had an interview with an AI chat engine, basically, right, using NLP. And so I was basically being interviewed by the AI itself. So that was quite interesting and different. And beyond that, now this company was going to pay me really well, right, to help train this particular model. And I was going through the process after that of, getting set up where I would get paid and as a contractor and things like that. And I got to this one point where it wanted me to connect my bank account to that AI engine. And I put the brakes on. I went, whoa, 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 stop, right? Let me do a little more investigating. So, not like a company wanting to do direct deposit, but this is literally an AI engine going, we need this. And I went and looked at it, and I'm not going to call out any names of people or the payment service or any of that, right? That's not my point. But when I looked at it, once you connect your account with your routing number and your, say, checking account, it now has access. It can see in the disclaimer, right, the EULA or end user license agreement that nobody ever reads, right? It said that basically they can see every transaction you've ever made. They have full control of your banking account. And I went, there is no way on God's green earth, or, no way in quotations, add your own adjective here, I'm going to do that. Right, so that's where I put the brakes on, and I was like, I would really love to work right to help do this, but I am not giving you that information, not on any stretch of the imagination. So that leads me to another thought. Clawbot has become all the rage. The personal assistant. People are downloading this thing. Again, it has access to your emails, your bank, your passwords, your all this stuff, which is now, right, the guy who created it is now gone to work with and connected with OpenAI, Sam Altman. Here's what I'm really trying to say is that people are not in all of the rush to, push out AI and assistance and doing these things to make our life easier. Convenience. But there's not enough checks and balances, right, with these models. Large language models or LLMs have become all the rage, but there's a different model called a small language model. And when we talk about specific applications being developed for a company, I personally feel like it would be a better choice to use small language models that are very focused oriented, right? And you're not going to get so much hallucination and this and that and the other. A lot of developers today are using, like Codex from OpenAI and things like that to, help with writing code. But again, there comes a problem that you may not know. So let's take, for example, I wanted to write some code and I use AI and I tell it, okay, I want to use Python code and this is what I'm trying to do. Write me some code. Boom. Right, just within seconds, I've got a working model. And so I test that. Everything seems to be working good. And then maybe I come back and I go, okay, now take this and add obfuscation, right? Because I want to make this a proprietary product. And so it adds obfuscation, i.e. encryption. So now I don't know if it's, again, I could take the new obfuscated code and I could run that and it runs just like the original code, but I don't really know what's in the obfuscation, right? So there could have been things inserted by the AI into that like a back door, okay? And it has functionality that I don't know about. And it's this problem that's been discussed before, like with compilers, right? Where the original compiler may have had a small, right, issue, and then you get the next iteration and it gets a little bigger, right? You just don't know it. And then it just keeps, adding on and adding on because all the compilers were built off the first one. So let me kind of put the analogy this way where maybe you can understand. For those of you who are gun enthusiasts or ex-military or even active duty military or hunters, right, when we talk about guns, if I was to set, right, a rifle and it's setting in a mount where it's fixed, okay, and I'm dialing it in and maybe I'm at 100 yards from the target, and we fire a bullet and it hits maybe a half inch from dead bullseye center. It's still in the bullseye, but it's not quite perfectly dead in the center, right? It's a little to the left, maybe half inch, quarter inch, something like that. Okay, the gun's still mounted, it's still fixed. Now we're at 500 yards. Same thing, only now I'm not even in the bullseye. Okay, now we do it again and we're 1,000 yards out. I don't even hit the target. All right, so a small little, variance, the further you go, the greater the problem becomes. Okay, and we just need to have some common sense and be cautious. People are rushing out there that know nothing about AI or how these models work. Like what is a neural network? What are transformers? What are these things that we're using behind the scenes? And is it actually doing what I think it's doing? It may be on the surface doing what I want it to do, but I need to dig a little deeper, okay? I need to fully understand what's happening and what am I giving it access to, especially on my desktop or on, it's being pushed at us today with, Copilot and Gemini, right? And these different models that it's everywhere. And you almost don't have a choice anymore. And it has access. You think about your phone that, Google's running Gemini, these new, AI enabled phones. You're just logging into your bank account. Are they logging all of that? Probably, right? I can't say for sure, but I would assume so. So as a cyber professional and a security guy, I have to think in terms of worst case scenario, right? There's the old adage of plan for the best or hope for the best. Let me say it that way. Hope for the best, plan for the worst, okay? I always have to think about anything I create for good. Someone else can take that exact same model, manipulate that, and do evil with it. Let me give you an example. Nuclear energy, the thought process behind it, right? Before we had, i.e. the atomic bomb, the process or thought process was to create, through fusion, a clean, cheap energy that would solve the world's, right, petrochemical issue and the dependency on petrochemicals. And on the surface, yeah, great idea. But where has that taken us today, right? We have nuclear weapons all over the place. The capability of destroying the earth without any problem. So this is, the problem with when we create things, we have to think about not can we, because today we have the ability to create anything we want. We really do, okay? If you can think about it, you can create it, or there are people who have the intelligence to create it. But the question is, can we? That answer is yes. The question has to be, should we? When writing code and developing programs, and I know this from personal experience, you're not focused on what somebody else can do with it. You know, my focus is, I just need this stinking thing to work, okay? I need it to work and do what I need it to do, and that's my focus. Now, once that's done, right, then we can look at what could somebody else do, and therein comes the whole secure DevOps process, right? Where, you know, we're trying to, at each iteration of code, we're handing it over to the ethical hackers, and they're trying to break the code and manipulate it, and then we go back and it goes through rounds and rounds and rounds, right, until we, i.e., have a secure product in the end. But the truth is, somebody's still going to figure out how to break it. So that tends to be the focus, right? So I have to ask myself up front, if I do this, what can somebody else do with it, okay? Hackers are not inherently evil at birth, right? Nobody sets out in life with, I want to be a criminal hacker. That's just not the reality. The reality is we are curious people, okay? I don't just want to know how something works. Once I know that, what can I make it do, right? That it wasn't designed to do. That curiosity is, you know, who hackers are, okay? That's just inherently who we are. I was that kid that would take apart the old wind-up clock. I would literally take it apart spring by spring and put it back together, and it would work, okay? That's the type of mentality or thought process behind most hackers. They don't set out to become criminals, but they find that to be an easy path, okay? And thus, that's, you know, why they do what they do. But again, it's the thought process behind it, and understanding that thought process helps us. So when we think about in terms of AI and the rush to push this out, as individuals, as companies, right, are implementing this, you have to really think about, how do I make sure my data is secure, right? You may want to consider, if you're going to use AI in some type of way like that, deploying it locally, right? Deploying some LLM within your environment that is not connected to the open internet. Therein, you know, it becomes a bigger problem. But I just wanted to touch base this morning with this and kind of, you know, get that out there. Be wise, be smart, right? And think about what we're actually doing with these new technologies. They're great assets. They can help us and enhance us in our work and in our lives, but we need to be responsible with what we're doing. All right, peace out.